Site 4 is here? Where the humans keep their dead?
As the white flash faded, Karina found both herself and Zarida where she and Alali had appeared days before. It was about midday, and the sky was overcast. The smell of rain was starting to thicken on the wind. But it wasn't all that unpleasant. Karina liked storms.
Have you not ever been to Site 4 before?
No, not me. I was always assigned with protecting the constructions of Sites 1 and 2. The humans in this dimension have some interesting cinema related to graveyards and horrid supernatural things happening to stupid teenagers.
Yeah. Alali showed me some of those kinds of movies. They're interesting.
You've been spending a lot of time with Alali. Are you two an item?
Karina moved through the spot in the gate where she had created before, and Zarida followed her. They started to walk across the graveyard.
Oh, no, we're not.
Oh, so then maybe you're helping out an R&D. That's cool.
A slight tickle began flickering on the bottom of Karina's throat, and yet she brushed it aside.
So, what kinds of things are you working on with her? Alali is pretty unorthodox when it comes to her artifacts.
I suppose so.
Oh, this one time, she gave me this staff for protection that sent out an energy orb from the tip. Well, whenever the orb hit something, it created a small 5-foot by 5-foot zone, and within that zone, time was frozen. She said it could be helpful for stopping pursuers. Who else would come up with that sort of tool?
That sounds like an amazing artifact. Do you still have the staff? Or did you give it back?
Oh, I lost it.
Karina stopped in place and she peered over at her coworker. Her face contorted in absolute disgust.
You lost it? What do you mean? How did you lose it when we've only just started fighting against an enemy force?
Why are you sounding so offended? It's not like you created it. Are you sure you and Alali aren't an item?
An intense heat blossomed in Karina's cheeks, and Zarida began laughing harder. She continued to revel in Karina's expense as they continued walking through the graveyard to a collection of enclosed raised tombs. Zarida held up a hand.
Stay here, and I'll see if there are any humans around.
Zarida's body shimmered briefly, and then she dipped the tip of her right foot into the shadow of a small gravestone. Suddenly, her body took on a more liquid form, and she melted into the shadow. Karina knelt down where she stood, and she scanned the landscape around her. There weren't any humans in sight, but Zarida would be able to make sure. Zarida had the ability to enter into a pseudo-dimension that existed alongside this one, a dimension of shadows. She could see out from the shadows, and even exit out of them at will. Karina's stomach twisted a little, and she considered the lost artifact. Something about it wasn't right, and it persisted in her thoughts.
It's all clear.
Karina jumped a little, and she whirled to look over her shoulder. Zarida hunched over her, and the most demented grin was planted on her face.
Did I scare you? I came out through one of the shadows back there, and I saw you. Oh, I couldn't resist.
You're so funny. So, it's clear? That's good.
Karina led Zarida over to where the Site 4 Anam Vaporator was concealed. She pulled out a small remote device from her infinity bag, keyed in the access code, and then pressed the central green button. The illusion of the raised tomb structure faded to reveal a large circular machine with a single rod in the center. It looked like a metal flower, with each of the individual panels on the ground resembling petals. There were a pair of large circular tanks that contained the collected Anam energy.
You take one, and I take the other?
Sounds great to me.
The tanks were on either side of the device. Karina went to the right side, and she knelt down by the extractor port. She pulled out an Anam transport battery, ATB for short, from her infinity bag, which was the size of a large pumpkin. According to Alali, the ATB had a specialized and miniaturized pocket dimension that could hold vast sums of Anam energy in a smaller space. Karina hooked up the extractor port to the ATB and began the transfer. As it was locked in place during the transfer, Karina decided to walk around the Anam Vaporator.
Hey, I locked mine in place. Do you need any? What are you doing?
Zarida whirled to face her, all while stuffing a square artifact device in her infinity bag. It was quick, but Karina saw enough of the device. It had a display on the front, a functional keyboard, and a small nub at the end. The ATB had already been locked in place. Zarida grinned from ear to ear, but her eyes twinkled oddly.
I'm not doing anything. Why do you ask?
What were you doing with that artifact?
I wasn't doing anything wrong. Geez, what is with you today, Karina? Your head's in the clouds.
Zarida got up and started walking casually over to Karina. A sudden flicker of white-hot panic stabbed into her, and she activated her magic. Karina's skin shimmered and her muscles bulged. Zarida stopped moving, and genuine panic danced in her eyes.
Whoa, hold on! What's going on? Are we under attack?
I didn't like the way you were approaching me. What were you doing with that scanner?
This is a big misunderstanding. Yes, I was scanning the extractor port, but that was because Abjit asked me to.
She did?
Yes, she wanted me to confirm that the pressure ratio was to the energy being, diffused. Look, I don't remember exactly what she said, but all of this aggression you have right now is unnecessary.
A voice hummed from the infinity bag, and the same voice called out from Zarida's bag.
Emergency! Emergency! We need help! We're being attacked by the other Nymphians! Help!
Karina pulled out the crystal and looked at it.
Gadeen is in trouble.
Let's take what Anam we have here and go to reinforce Gadeen and Vesa. What do you say?
Yes. Let's go.
And done. Another successful job.
Faheem Qadir leaned up from underneath the hood of the SUV, and he wiped off his hands on his pink oilcloth. He closed the hood with a slam, and then moved over to the sink so he could remove all of his acquired grime. Splendid notes danced on the air coming from his phone, the current soundtrack coming from the Academy-acclaimed war movie, The Final Flight. Now that he was no longer forced to toil under the hood of an automobile, the notes careened into him without impediment. He smiled broadly and closed his eyes as to better delve into the music. Faheem was a tall man standing 6 foot 4 inches, with a muscular frame, dark sun-baked skin, hairy arms, a well-groomed beard, a strong chin, and long black hair. His hair was tied into a ponytail and ended at the bottom of his neck. Faheem had a pair of dark brown eyes as well. He wore a dark gray mechanic jumpsuit, a pair of black leather work boots, and a white undershirt. He moved about the interior of the commercial garage, the one that he and his father owned, and he inspected the pair of sliding doors. They were both locked up tight, which was good. While this neighborhood wasn't the most dangerous in the city, leaving unlocked places for people to get into often led to trouble. Faheem's father had left him alone and in charge, which was perfectly fine. One day, Faheem would be the sole owner of Qadir and Son's garage.
No! Please! Stop!
The sudden scream had made him jump, and his senses burst to life. Faheem grabbed his phone and silenced the music. As soon as it was secured in his pocket, he moved into the cool night. The crisp air slapped at him with its presence, and while it felt good to be out of the hot garage, Faheem didn't pay it any mind. He gazed around frantically while he balled his fists.
Please leave me alone!
Faheem turned his attention to the left, where a woman cowered before a man. She leaned against the base of a brick building, perhaps 200 feet away from the garage. It was fairly dark, so Faheem couldn't see the exact details. He knew 2 things, though, for certain. Firstly, the woman was in trouble. Secondly, he was bigger than the man. To be honest, it wouldn't have mattered if he were smaller. Faheem couldn't not help. He ran down the street and then barreled into the man. As the figure rolled across the pavement, Faheem noticed things. This was not a man, but instead a creature. It was bulky in dimensions, with large arms and thighs, a thick torso, and a pair of black eyes over a ghastly opened mouth. The creature's skin was made from lacquered wood. It slowly got to its feet and let out a horrid moan.
What are you? You strange abomination.
Please help me! This monster and others attacked my friends and I at a park.
A park? You mean Sanson Park?
The creature roared and then charged Faheem. He front-kicked it in the chest, but the creature was solid, and despite Faheem's force, it had little effect.
You, girl, run! Get to safety! I'll handle this guy, and then try to help your friends!
Faheem ducked under another one of the monster's swings, and then he rushed him like he was a football linebacker. As he drove through the creature's body, he lifted it onto his shoulder, and then tossed it into a couple of plastic trash cans. The creature tumbled into them, knocking them over. It slowly rose a moment later. The girl had gotten away. Faheem stepped back, and then gazed around. As far as he saw, no one was around, or looking in his direction.
I don't know what you are, but I know of one way to deal with you.
The creature gave an angry grunt and stepped forward toward Faheem again. Once more, Faheem stepped back and reached into his left front pocket. He pulled out a golden coin with the image of a twister on the front and back. The coin fit into the center of his palm. It was such an interesting little trinket. Faheem raised the coin above his head.
Glorious! Sparkling! Power!
A vibrant purple field of light surrounded Faheem, and his body began glowing intensely. His grease monkey mechanic jumpsuit faded away like mist, as did the rest of his clothes. A lilac-colored tunic slipped onto his body like a bedsheet. The end of the tunic came to his mid-thigh, and a pair of tight, dark purple underwear briefs ensured that he wouldn't be fined for indecent exposure. A dark purple-colored belt, the same color as his underwear, was around his waist. Both his tunic and his underwear were covered in glitter and sparkles. Faheem was barefoot, which was a little weird, but then again, his feet didn't actually touch the ground. A small pair of lilac-colored angel wings were on his back, and they extended out 2 feet on each side. Small circles of wind twirled under his feet, which was what really kept him floating. To be honest, Faheem would not have selected this outfit for himself, and he couldn't change it either. The field of light faded, and Sparkle Guardian Boreas entered the world. The monster lunged at Boreas, but he zipped above it with elegance and grace. Boreas thrust his open palm toward the creature, and a savage, chilling wind slammed into it. Its body pressed against the pavement of the street. Sparkle Guardian Boreas flipped his body around and hovered around the creature in a right-arcing pattern. He channeled his magic into his hands and backhanded out as if to slap the monster. A miniature freezing tornado spiraled out and struck the prone creature. Its body began twisting rapidly as the tornado continued to move down the street. Ice covered the surface of its body, and then the tornado tossed the monster further down the street. Thick frost coated its body. Slowly, it struggled to get back to its feet. Boreas swept him up in another icy tornado, only this time he kept the monster inside the freezing winds until its entire body was iced over. With a flick of the wrist, the tornado threw the frozen monster against the wall of a brick building. The monster shattered into millions of pieces moments later.
Maybe I can save her friends. I have to try.
Sparkle Guardian Boreas flew through the streets with the spinning circles of wind just under his feet. They had tilted a little, but they were still locked under his toes, his arches, and his heels. It honestly felt like he was riding an invisible motorcycle or something, and the wind blew up against his face and hair. It didn't take long to get to Sayson Park, and luckily there weren't too many people on the street. Boreas kept lower to the ground, so it almost looked like he were running. Sayson Park was fairly big, and had a lot of secluded areas. In one such area, Boreas found a strange scene. There were a dozen more creatures, looking identical to the one he had destroyed earlier. A pair of child-sized people were standing with the monsters, only they appeared strange, and Boreas sort of felt weird energy rippling off of them. One of the smaller people had bright pink hair, and was dressed in what looked like a clown outfit. The other small person had gray hair, the color of storm clouds, and she wore a black dress that fell to her ankles. Humans laid on the ground in different places, and their bodies looked pale. What was so striking was that the giant gang of monsters and the pair of little people were engaged in a fight with 3 other people. People in sparkling outfits. One of the sparkling people wielded a scythe, and she cut down and struck out at the strange wood-like monsters. Another sparkler was dressed head to toe in armor and carried a tactical shield. The third looked like a real-life magical girl from the anime shows. She had a staff with a blooming rose headpiece. The monsters were trying to surround the trio, and the other Sparkle Guardians used magic, just like what Boreas had. The shield wielder shot fireballs from his shield. The staff user summoned plants and massive vines to wrap around the monsters. And the one with the scythe had a magic weapon, based on the way that the blade shimmered. With swiftness, Sparkle Guardian Boreas flew above where most of the monsters were, and he gestured out with both hands. A pair of tornadoes blasted out and sent numerous monsters flying in different directions.
There's another one? Ugh, magical boys are the worst.
We have to regroup. Get the plant lady and break her. She's the leader.
Slowly, the monsters got back on their feet, but then several fireballs exploded against them. The force sent them sprawling again.
Yes! We've got another Sparkle Guardian! You have cute underwear!
A slight blush filtered onto Boreas's cheeks, and yet he focused on the monsters still congregating beneath him. He brought his hands together and channeled his magical energy into them. A spiraling ball of wind erupted into existence, and the center of it glowed with a small purple bead of power. Boreas pushed both of his hands forward, and an icy tornado flew from his palms. It barreled into the small, childlike beings. They and their monster friends tumbled back away from the unconscious humans. Thick plant vines wrapped around the humans' arms and legs and dragged them away from the conflict. The shield wielder positioned himself in front of them, and suddenly an energy shield surrounded them.
Don't worry about them, Purple Panties. Sparkle Guardian Demeter will make sure they're healed and will live. Sparkle Guardian Hestia is the one with the shield, and I am Sparkle Guardian Persephone. What's your name? Or do you prefer Purple Panties?
I am Boreas.
Great to meet you! You blow them, I'll slice them.
Boreas whipped his arms out again, sending forth more freezing tornadoes. The brilliant white light faded away, and Linnet stood in the middle of one of the water treatment facilities in Duinville. Once upon a time, this had been the spot of her first mission. It had been her idea to place one of the Anam Vaporators out there, and it was hidden away at the back of the facility, camouflaged by illusions and misdirections. Linnet's stomach twisted inside her, and she hummed a little loudly to herself. Her vocal cords vibrated in her throat. At first, Alfreda gave her an odd look, and then she gave a brief nod. She, Alfreda, and Elvinia had teleported to the entry point, designated by the teleportation pads. Alfreda knelt down, and then she started pulling out clay figures from her infinity bag. Elvinia held up the white crystal to her face.
Gadeen, Visa, this is Elvinia. Can you please give us your location?
Is it possible that we're too late?
I hope not. Damn them. Elvinia, please keep trying to get a hold of them. Linnet, keep warming up, please. We may need your extra edge.
Alfreda pulled out the 9th soldier and began flowing magic out through her hands. Elvinia kept talking into the white crystal. but she also pulled out a polished deep green orb. She clutched it in one of her palms like a tennis ball. A bright flash engulfed the area, and Elvinia pointed the orb at the light. Linnet stepped out in front of Alfreda, who was still in the process of summoning her soldiers. However, as soon as the light faded, Linnet smiled. Zarida and Karina stood where the teleportation pad had dropped them. And then Alfreda's soldiers came to life and were full-sized. Alfreda turned to regard Zarida and Karina a moment later.
It's great that you're here. Zarida, please scout out the area and find our operatives. Karina, please fight alongside my soldiers, but let them bear the brunt of the action.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Zarida stepped behind Karina into her shadow, and then she was gone. Linnet continued to hum and exercise her vocal cords as the soldiers, Karina, Elvinia, and Alfreda marched through the back parts of the facility. However, it didn't take long to find the carnage. Zarida stepped out of one of the shadows and then moved in behind Alfreda as they got closer. Linnet formed two fists, and she mentally ran through the lyrics of one of her songs, the Song of Heroines. Upon installation of Site 2, Elvinia had designed artifacts that made humans forget about this part of the facility. None of them ever came back this way, nor did they see it, thanks to the illusionary artifacts. 4 large water filtration tanks were positioned in a wide area, but the ground was saturated with moisture. Large pools were in various places, and a large slice had been torn into the side of one of the tanks. There were large dents and damage in other tanks as well, although they were still intact. Broken remains of the Oberon Corporation minions lay scattered all over. Both of the operatives lay on their backs in adjacent pools. They were still breathing, but their bodies were bruised and bloodied. 3 enemy Nymphians stood between the pair of unconscious operatives. 2 of the enemy Nymphians were the same villainous operatives who had been accosting the area continuously. The third, well, Linnet had horrid shivers cascade down her back. The third Nymphian wore a dark red suit with pale blue pinstripes. She had short red hair and a pair of blue eyes, and that Nymphian stared right at Linnet.
Well, it's about time. I was hoping you would be drawn out again. I heard from my associate here that you had accompanied your commander.
Do I know you?
You don't know me, but you all knew my mother.
I knew it. I knew it as soon as I saw you.
Wait, you're...
Yes, I am. I couldn't believe my good fortune when my supervisor gave me a list of dimensions to assault. I snatched the file and was out of her office before she could finish giving me the list. So, I hope you understand. This is personal.
Linnet opened her mouth to speak, but Alfreda held up her hand. It wasn't an aggressive gesture, but one born out of compassion. Was Linnet trembling on the outside as fiercely as she was on the inside? She must have been, because Elvinia placed a hand on the small of Linnet's back, and she beamed an adoring and concerned gaze at her. Feeling her best friend's slight touch did ease some of her tension.
Your mother was slain in a massive final battle against the Sparkle Guardians.
We all know that is bullshit. My mother was straddling that one, ready to stab her to death. When she screamed, she melted my mother's brain. You all lied and told your board of directors that she was slain in battle. And then you stole her job. I'm here to ensure you all pay for what you did.
1,000 prickles stabbed into Linnet's insides.
I don't know how you know what you know, but your mother was a monster, and we regret nothing.
Of course she was a monster. My mother was the most dangerous and powerful Citadel commander that Nymphia had ever seen. You all toppled her, and now I will topple you. You regret nothing? When I finish with you, you will regret every moment that ever led you to meeting my mother in the first place.
The Nymphian gave a little bow.
Know my name. I am Kolumbia. These are my associates, Heaux and Jodesha. You probably already knew this, but I am with Titania Technologies.
Your company has been causing a lot of trouble for our company, but you won't succeed here. The Oberon Corporation is the oldest Anam energy company in Nymphia. Besides, you said yourself, we defeated your mother, the most dangerous and powerful Citadel commander ever. We beat her, and we will beat you.
We'll see. I left your operatives alive, by the way. After all, this is our first meeting. My mother raised me to always bring gifts, and so I grant you their lives. Going forward, we will strike to kill.
You don't have to do this. This planet is plenty big. In fact, you could go to other places in this country. We don't have to fight.
Oh, but we do. It's more than just a turf war. My personal mission is to destroy your citadel and murder all of you.
You won't win! I don't care who your mother was or what powers you have! We are united and strong!
All eyes fell on Linnet, and the world seemed to crunch a little in on her. Elvinia placed a hand on her shoulder and then gave an affectionate squeeze, and Alfreda smiled.
Linnet is right. Your mother underestimated us and she paid for it. She was willing to sacrifice all of her staff to gain unnecessary amounts of Anam energy. She would have set a dangerous precedent. I am pleased that you left my operatives alive, but know going forward that you will be faced with the same level of force.
I certainly hope so. Otherwise, crushing you wouldn't be fun. Ladies, let's be off.
Kolumbia pulled out a black crystal from her pocket.
The next time we meet, I am going to make you all suffer.
I will make you pay for what you did, little Miss Harden your body.
A brilliant deep blue flash engulfed the area. Linnet ran over to where the pair of Nymphian operatives were, and she started to sing.